Chapter 30. The Whirlpools. The roar of waters. From the headlong height they rush and cleave the wave-worn precipice. The fall of waters, rapid as the light. The flashing mass foams, the shaking the abyss. The hell of waters, where they howl and hiss and boil in endless torture. Childe Harold, Canto 4. The awful splendor of the mighty cataract were displayed in all their glory. A vast clustering wall glittered emerald, seeming like the Miltonic battlements of heaven, rising from the waters to the skies. Its fountains a roaring ocean of tumultuous billows, whirling columns and vortices. Its summit crowned with roiling vapors, amid which gleamed countless rainbows. Its deep-toned thunders resounded amid the precipice and hollow caverns, almost overwhelmed our souls with unutterable awe. With clasped hands and heaving bosom, Sulami gazed upon the tremendous scene. "O thou mighty Mahasolitambhu," she murmured in thrilling tones, "what grandeur, what glory and beauty are thine! Enthroned amid the deeps, veiled in clouds, crowned with celestial halos, thou art indeed the symbol of infinite majesty and power, and thy dread thunders are as the voice of him before whose face the heavens tremble." "O Sulama!" murmured Luzima, clinging trembling to her companion, and hiding her face in her bosom. "Thy great and noble soul can view with calmness these awful glories which overwhelm my heart with terror." The princess now took out her tablets and pencils and began to make a sketch of the scene. Having some skill with pencil, I accompanied her with a sketch of my own. I had occasionally noticed trunks and branches of trees swept down by the torrent above, tossing around us here and there amid the waves. The sketches completed, we were comparing them and listening to the critical comments of Altafora when suddenly Luzella uttered a piercing shriek, throwing her arms around Sulima, as a large tree shot up under the gunwale, ripped the starboard oars short off their locks, crashing down, tore away the awning, and swept the princess out into the waters. In an instant I dashed off the coat and cap and plunged in after her, stunned by the shock she had sunk. The next moment I caught a glimpse of her dress floating some distance ahead, and with a few rapid strokes reached and drew her partly above water, while a glance at the boat showed Altafora struggling in the arms of the crew, who were holding him back from plunging in after us. The princess soon recovered from the shock, regained her breath, flung off her turban and mantle, threw her supple form forward, and with rapid strokes swam towards the boat. Cautioning her against too great an outlay of strength, I kept close by her side for several minutes. Then I saw that we were making no headway, but were drifting steadily backwards towards the terrible line of whirlpools skirting the base of the cataract, while a glance ahead showed our boat helpless by reason of her broken gunwale. But the Duke's barge was hurrying to the rescue, and the boat after boat rowed swiftly towards us, while loud cries of terror and dismay burst from the assembled thousands on the shore. The movements of the waters under the influence of the heavy gales, storms, and cyclones are uniform and rhythmic, even amidst their most tumultuous agitations. But their movements at the base of the great cataracts seem no longer amenable to the laws of motion. They are ungovernable, riotous, presenting fit symbols of the anarchies of revolutions, the turmoils of mobs and communes. The water was in a state of amorphism. They seemed to be stark mad, scourged into frightful insanities, as if lashed by whips of demons. Whirling clouds of spray concealed the pandemonium, where churned up surges, pyramids of spume, vortices, and whirlpools are raging. The victim who is caught here perishes at once, and his body revolves like Ixen bound to his wheel, until by chance it is thrown out from the whirls. Beyond these lies the battleground of chopped-up billows and surges, jumbled pell-mell together. There is something fantastical in their uncouth and drunken flounderings. Whoever falls here is speedily suffocated. On the outskirts of this chaos extends a broad area of undulations, swells, seesaw movements, and tangled cross-currents, in which the expertest swimmer is utterly bewildered, and from which he cannot extricate himself. We were now tossed to and fro on the angry surges. The most powerful efforts barely kept us above water, and we should have speedily perished but that we were thrown upon the broad surface of a revolving eddy where we were able to get our breath. "Courage!" cried the princess, sweeping her long hair back from her brows. "I see the boats!" A dozen or more, headed by the Duke's barge, were pulling towards us with all their might. "If we can keep in the center of this eddy till the boat reaches us," said I, "we are safe." But it required an incessant struggle to accomplish this, and to my inexpressible dismay, I saw that my brave companion was losing strength. I drew her near my side, directing her to lay her head upon my shoulder, and grasped my guidance in her teeth. She obeyed my directions, and for a short period we were able to keep our position, but at last we were gradually drawn from the eddy, and looking back, I saw to my horror that we were rapidly being swept towards one of the swift overtow currents running directly to the whirlpools at the foot of the cataract, where it was lost in clouds of spray. The princess saw at a glance the terrible danger. Leave me to my fate," she cried. "Oh, Frederick, why did you imperil your life for mine?" "Never will I leave you," I exclaimed. "Courage!" And we sprang forward to regain the center of the eddy in vain. The current seized us with overmastering grasp and hurried us towards the cataract, whose thundering roar rang like the death knell in our ears, mingled with the despairing cries of the boat's crews as they vainly strove to stem the raging waves. I glanced at the barge and saw the Duke standing in the prow, wringing his hands and with features convulsed with agony, while my faithful John, far in advance, stripped to the waist with a rope clenched in his teeth, was swimming towards us, followed by Altafora, who had broken loose from his crew. One glance at the hell of waters around us, one glance at the mighty sea descending from the sky, and Sulimia, with calm and sweet resignation, raised her lovely eyes and clasped her hands, breathing one short prayer. The next moment, clasped in each other's arms, amid darkness and the roar of commingling thunders, we were hurried to our doom. Suddenly a terrific scream rent the air. My arm was seized in an iron grasp, and I was dragged up with an irresistible power from the waters. My lapsing senses enabled me dimly to discover the enormous head and fiery eyes of a gigantic bird whose talons clutched my form like hooks of steel, while high in the air his broad expanded wings flapped amid the rolling vapors. It seemed as if we were seized by some terrible demon of the waters, and I sank into insensibility as deep as hers, whose inanimate form I unconsciously strained to my breast. When I recovered consciousness, I was lying on a cot in a tent under the grove. "Thank God, he breathes," whispered a voice. Altafora was bending over me. Dear friend," he fervently murmured, pressing my hand. "The Princess Selima!" I exclaimed. The next moment the clouds of my brain cleared away. I felt as if awakened from a frightful dream, the memory of which still lingered. "The princess is unharmed, is safe and quietly reposing in her pavilion," said Dr. Hamaval. "Thank God!" I fervently ejaculated. Then, after a moment, "My faithful John?" Hi, exclaimed a familiar voice. "Me feel so much proud happy to see dear Captain Fred get all right again." And John was bent over me, his honest face all in a glow. "The brave fellow seized the rope in his teeth and sprang from the Duke's barge to rescue you," said the doctor. "He swam far ahead of the barge, but was beaten back again and again, and finally rescued with difficulty by the boats." "My dear and faithful John," said I, "how can I ever sufficiently thank you?" "By no speak more about it." "Who rescued the princess?" I asked. "You, yourself," replied Altafora. "Solimia owes her life to you." "No, I remember an enormous bird." "It was Lusa, the prince's favorite eagle," said the doctor. "The grasp of her talons seemed to crush the very life out of me. She was compelled to clasp you with tremendous power as she dove down and dragged you, holding the princess in your arms, from the billows. That terrible but saving clasp was the cause of your prolonged insensibility." In short time I arose and resumed my attire. Duke Athilion paid me a visit, expressing his gratitude in the warmest terms. Then came a message from the princess, inquiring after my health and announcing that she would be happy to see me soon as I felt able to visit her. "I accept the prince's invitation immediately," said I. "Why this haste? You are not strong enough. Wait a while," said the doctor. "I'll go at once." Altafora and I left the tent and passed over the sward to the royal pavilion, which was decorated with a standard and crest of Mandal Ultima. At the portal stood several ladies of rank and beautiful girls of the princess's suite. Their countenances were wreathed with smiles. The curtains were raised, and we entered the pavilion. The atmosphere was laden with a sweet fragrance of roses. On a divan festooned with rich hangings reclined the princess. Her matchless form, lovely countenance, and almost angelic expression seemed like a vision of heavenly beauty. The Princess Lazula was by her side. Sulima rose from the divan as we advanced, glancing upon me with her resplendent eyes which shone like twin stars at night, while on either lid hung a tear, glittering like a dewdrop under the sun's ray. "Lieutenant Hamilton," she said in a trembling accent, "at the risk of your life, you rescued my brother from imminent death, and you have now saved my own. I owe you a debt of gratitude which I never can repay." "Dear and honored princess," I replied, "speak not of it, I implore you." Sulima extended her beautiful arms, bare almost to the shoulders, towards me with a sweet smile irradiated her countenance. "Come hither, my friend," she murmured. "My feelings were too deep for utterance. I trembled as I drew near the royal couch, knelt, and kissed her hand." Sulima bent forward and laid her hand almost caressingly on my head. Her warm and delicious breath fanned my cheek. I raised my face to hers. One ravishing glance from her resplendent eyes met my ardent gaze, one bright smile that thrilled my soul with ineffable joy. A faint blush mantled in her cheek. She kissed my brow and softly murmured, "Dear Frederick, 'tis the seal of our friendship." "My dear," said Zuzella, who was standing with the princess near a vase of exotics, "don't you think these flowers are rather becoming to my hair?" "Very becoming indeed," replied the princess calmly. "I shall wear them at the ball tomorrow evening. Prince, I select you for my partner," said the Hebe, glancing at him coquettishly. The prince joyfully accepted the honor. "And shall I not have the pleasure, Lieutenant Hamilton, to select you as my partner for the dance?" asked the princess quietly. The lieutenant bowed his acceptance.